Hello, welcome everybody to today's Appian community webinar. The topic of today's webinar is migrating your existing PowerBuilder applications to the web using the Appian web product. Today's community presenters, Alex Linos and John Travisano, are from NextGen Public Safety Solutions, a software vendor based in Connecticut, who have been working with PowerBuilder all the way back to the 2.0 days. Now, before we begin today's presentation, I wanted to just put up a brief disclaimer and remind you that today's presentation is in fact a community presentation. This is not authored by Appian, and the views expressed here are completely of the authors, independent of Appian. You're going to see in today's presentation possibly some links to some third-party frameworks, software, or other sites. Just please keep in mind that these third-party materials are not provided by Appian, and so you should carefully evaluate it and decide for yourself whether you will use that on your project or not. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over now to Alex and John.
Hi, this is Alex.
Hi, Alex.
And I want to briefly go over our webinar agenda. We're going to talk about our application dead end, how we tried to convert our application the first time and failed. We're going to give you a brief cost analysis where we weighed out our options on how to migrate our application. And we're going to give you a little bit on how we did a time frame for our changes from PowerBuilder to Appian Web. And then we're going to talk about the browser web plugin versus IWA, the installable web app in Appian Web. And then we're going to give you a demo of a cool trick we have in PowerBuilder and some source code around that for you to use in your applications. And then we'll also do a Q&A at the end.
Hello, I'm John Travisano. I'm the lead developer with NextGen. I've been programming in PowerBuilder for about 15 years. We also work with the .NET, and our backend is within SQL Server. I've worked on numerous projects throughout the state of Connecticut and Massachusetts. We listed a few there, and I will be focusing in on the end of the presentation with the demo code and the INI trick we came up with.
And again, I'm Alex Linos. I am a network engineer at NextGen Public Safety. I specialize in networking, virtualization, and I bring a unique perspective because we also manage several of our clients' IT infrastructure. And I'm presenting the boots on the ground perspective versus the how it works on my machine perspective. And you know, if anyone wants to follow up with me with any technical questions, I would be more than happy to assist you with that. NextGen Public Safety Solutions is a CAD RMS vendor in the state of Connecticut. What is CAD and RMS? Computer-aided dispatching is what a dispatcher does when you dial 911. They geocode your location. They take in data from the 911 system and dispatch emergency personnel to your location. We interface with several systems, from 911 systems to systems that alert fire, police, and EMS personnel to your location. We work over 4G LTE modems in police and fire apparatus. We also have an iOS app that is native that we have written for first responders. We do report management solutions. And basically anything and everything to run a public safety department.
So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have an application where we know it's coming to the end of its life cycle. It's a thick client application on a laptop that was developed to work offline because at the time the technology was 2G modems. So it was designed limited feature editions, and we found out that it has a high cost to support it. So what ends up happening is a lot of Band-Aid fixes are being applied to this application. So we knew at some point this application was going to end.
So we had heard of Appian Web back early in I want to say middle of 2014, and we got a demo thinking it was a solution to all our issues. At the time, we were struggling with native iOS development and easier deployments, and being, PowerBuilder developers, our developers here thought they could do it all, and they tried to make an application that did everything and shoehorn it into one size fits all, and unfortunately that didn't work. We started making changes with no clear motivation for the changes we were making. But that changed for us because we had to do a rewrite to the Connecticut accident report. And while we were doing this rewrite, we made a pretty intuitive step-by-step question type interface to create the accident report and to generate it. So from there, our motivations changed.
So at that point, we did a cost analysis to see if Appian Web was going to be a cost-effective solution versus hiring a full-time developer to maintain this application that has a dead end approaching. We have two code sets, one for that application on the laptops and one for what we call the main system. And the main system is where that new accident report was developed. We really did not want to go into redesigning the databases on the laptops for the future releases, and we did not want to maintain two code sets. So Appian Web allowed us to maintain one code set with the current staffing we have. So overall, we would be saving money and time by switching to Appian Web. So the next phase was to jump into converting the code set. And yes, it took months to convert everything, but it's worth every minute. We also had help from Chris Pollock's examples. That kind of slingshotted us forward when we hit some brick walls. And it was also the perfect time to replace legacy code. As Armin said, we were on PowerBuilder 2.0 at the beginning, so there was some legacy code that needed to be ripped out and updated. And we also had EA Server, so at the same time we took EA Server out and switched to IIS.
Having now successfully converted our application, we started to deploy it to our clients. In deploying it to our clients, each client is kind of their own island of themselves. We were dealing with multiple laptops with multiple browsers and different operating systems. And when we started, we were having a lot of trouble with the IWA, the original web plugin versus IWA. Our windows were resized to fit a 1024 by 768 screen, which is common for police vehicles. And having the browser window around it really was difficult. We had to come up with like full screen hacks and little scripts to make things work. And it was a little painful for a while. But then when IWA came out, we flew through upgrading all our clients to Appian Web 2016 because of how seamless IWA made installing our application. In so much as me having to dedicate technical resources to it, our clients were now able to click on the link, install the IWA runner, and the application would open seamlessly, just like the application they're using inside. And for them, they loved it because there was no need to retrain their personnel. The install was so easy that even the users could do it. And everybody has had positive feedback on IWA, and we've migrated all of our customers to that product. So we're really big fans of it here. Now, we had some useful solutions that helped us with our conversion that we wouldn't have been able to complete without the use of. We used PibblePeeper to kind of remove some old legacy code and the variables that were being instantiated but not used. There was a lot of things it was showing us that we were doing that had just been there because it was legacy and it had been removed, not used, commented out, and it still was lying around. So PibblePeeper helped us clean up our code. And then we moved to using WizSource by TopWiz by Roland, which is what we use for our source control, and that made managing a single source application easier for our developers. We've now even added a junior developer, and it's been easy to train them up on how to check in and check out objects. And we moved a lot of our build to what I call like the arbiter of the builds, our virtual machine, which does all the builds. So that'll pull in the individual pieces from our developers and give us a nice stable build that then goes to QA, QC. But one of our more useful solutions is we had to find a way to dynamically change the INI on an Appian web client. What am I talking about? Well, in traditional PowerBuilder development, everything pretty much lives in the INI. Your database settings, your application settings, your favorite sweatshirt, everything is in the INI file. So how do you do that when your INI lives not really on the client? It lives out on your Appian AEM installation, and then it pulls it down, but it's sort of there, it's sort of not there. So we had to find a way to modify the INI on the client as the application loads. Why is this important to us? Well, it's the same application that is a thick client inside the office now that has to be used in a mobile environment outside on a laptop or a tablet. So we had to be able to modify that on the fly. And we used a pretty cool trick to do it, and we're going to go ahead and demo that for you today.
All right, so as Alex was saying, we needed to be able to turn features on and off. So as you can see, that's the standard INI file that we all love. And then what we did was we started making database tables that represented the same sections and values as an INI, so that when the application opened up, we could read the data out of the table and update the INI files. But then we needed to go down all the way to a machine level. So by doing that, we added another database table and added a computer name to it with all the same sections, values, and keys. So this allows us to merge these two tables together and update an INI file all the way down to a machine level setting. So now we're going to get into the table structure. So this was the table structure we came up with for the main settings. So you can see you have the section key and value, and then we put a little description column in there so the developers can explain what this setting does to the technicians who will be setting this value within the database. And then you can see on the machine table, the only difference is the computer name has been added. All the other sections are the same. And then to merge the two tables together, we came up with a SQL procedure, pretty simple, and all you had to do is pass the computer name into it. And since we are in a SQL database, it's short and sweet, not too complicated. I'm assuming you could do this in Oracle and other databases out there. So now we just want to show you some of the source code and some of the tables within SQL that we use. So on the left here, you can see we have the table for the main INI. So I'm just going to enter in a section, the key value, and the value. And then on the right here, you can see that the code is very, very simple. We have a data window here that is calling that stored procedure. And then all you have to do is loop through it and pass in your section key and value into the set profile string. So we're going to open up the INI file. And you can see we do not have an application name section yet, or the key, I should say. So now it retrieves right here, and then we just hit update INI. And now you see that the name equals hello. And since we added this to the main INI table, this will go out to every single machine. But say you didn't want that on this specific machine. What you can do is you can override that setting in here. Now when we run, you'll see that now it says bye. And then we can update the INI file. And now it says bye just for this one machine. And as Alex was explaining how the INI within IWA and the web plugin for Appian, it doesn't exist in a folder where you can just have a user go into the C application folder, open the INI, set it, make it read-only so it never changes. This way now a technician can control all your INI files within your whole application on all the machines from one location. So we found this to be very useful in saving time and frustration in troubleshooting to make sure all the machines were configured the same. So I know this is probably one of the shorter presentations, but I think we are ready for questions and answers.
Great, thanks, Alex and John. Really appreciate that. Let's turn it over to the audience now. Please go ahead and type any technical questions you have inside the chat console, or I mean the question console of the webinar program. And Alex, John, and myself would be happy to answer those for you. So while we're waiting for people to ask questions, John, Alex, I had a quick question for you guys. So in terms of using the IWA, you had mentioned you got more screen real estate. Were there other benefits you guys saw in terms of the install that made it better than the browser plugin?
Yeah, I mean, the ease of the install versus the browser plugin. One of the one of the pain points we had with the browser plugin is some people wanted to use Chrome, and Chrome blocking native plugins was an issue, and also Firefox created different issues for us because it didn't obey any of the AEM, hide this, hide that. When everything was through IE, it would work great, but then sometimes we would run into trusted application or trusted zone issues, because a lot of times these laptops are kind of in a pseudo their own network connecting back in. So what we've run into with IWA is that all that goes away. You install the IWA runner. I, as a user, or as a technical person, can easily do it. There's no barrier to the user installing it for themselves. And because of how police laptops are arrayed in their vehicles, often what you'll have is everybody kind of logs in with a generic login, and then they input their login to get into our system, and that we're able to do through IWA, and get the login, and they don't see any difference from how they were using the application inside. To them, it's kind of the same thing. So,
so to them, it looks kind of like, yeah. So if I understand correctly, you're saying it looks like a PowerBuilder app, but the install is just automatic, and it always stays up to date because it's an internet app. It's not a traditional PowerBuilder app. So you're kind of getting
Correct.
The best of both worlds. Okay.
Correct. And one of the
Excellent.
things we're running into with updating our applications is we're always copying down PBDs to the client computers, and it's interrupting them. You have to create a maintenance window. We have to warn users. We have to have them log out of the system and then have them log back in. With IWA and Appian Web, we seamlessly update the software on the server. They may notice a brief blip while that happens, and then they're able to go back in, and they have the latest version of the software without having to get the user involved or having to get IT involved, and making sure that everything's up to date on the client.
Yep. Okay, excellent. So yeah, quite a few questions came in. And let me start with the first one. The first question was, does the application use single sign-on, the one that you guys have developed?
No, we don't use single sign-on. We do authenticate against Active Directory using LDAP.
And you're using what, Microsoft Active Directory?
Microsoft Active Directory, and we're calling a web service to authenticate.
Okay, great. And we have a question from actually another software vendor in the audience. They wanted to know, who is your cloud supplier? Basically, where are you hosting your Microsoft IA server?
So that's interesting, and I didn't really get into it too much, but so we're dealing with public safety, municipalities, towns, cities, places that are kind of islands unto themselves. When it comes to police, fire, and EMS services, these are extremely critical services where an outage can cost somebody their life. So a lot of our customers purposely run their own data centers. So when we're dealing with our application, it's almost 100% private cloud. So a town will build a data center to supply their police. What we found, and we did go through a storm not too long ago, well, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we did have a hurricane come through, and we lost a lot of internet services, which would have put somebody at a complete outage. But because these places are generator backed, and often able to contain all their own servers on-prem, they were able to keep running even at a very limited level. And a lot of our clients are hesitant to move to the cloud as their primary solution. It would be more of a disaster recovery or a backup solution at this point.
Got it. So a follow-up question to that is, what happens when the broadband drops in the police cruisers?
So we actually partner with another company called NetMotion Wireless, and they have a VPN solution, which is, it's more than a VPN. It's kind of a VPN on steroids, where it creates a persistent connection using its own network interface on a Windows laptop. So what'll happen is, typically you'll be driving along a town, and I'm sure everybody out there has experienced this. You're talking to somebody on the phone, and all of a sudden you're talking to yourself. And then 2 seconds later, it kind of comes back. So what's happening in that time frame? The cell phone carriers are doing things for tower handoffs to keep your phone call alive. So how do you keep a piece of software alive that's constantly communicating back to a server? NetMotion has a persistence where it will hold and buffer communication that was meant to go out between it and the server. And when that connection, it detects that connection is back alive, then those messages will start flowing again back and forth. We also do have some code where we're able to check for a connection before we try and do an action in our software. So yeah, that company is NetMotion Wireless, and we're a partner with them, and it's a good product.
Excellent, excellent. So if I understand correctly, it's really a combination of two things. You've done certain, error checking in your application before. For example, you do a data window retriever update, and then also you have this solution running really at the OS level, where it's for all the different Windows apps. No matter Appian or anything else, if the connection drops, it'll buffer it, as you had mentioned. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, and we have some code at the application level that'll check if the connection is alive, send. If the connection is not, wait, and then we'll wait again for 30 seconds and see if it's back. Of course, we still have impatient users who will, try and click their way through whatever. But
yeah,
we've found for the most part it works 99% of the time.
So it sounds like your app does kind of expect to have an internet connection. It's not an offline app, but it can gracefully handle, intermittent drops, right? Like if there's a 10, 20, 30, 40-second window, maybe when you don't have it, then it's fine. The app is not gonna choke. But you couldn't use the app all day long without an internet connection.
Correct. Especially with the demands today, everyone wants real-time information. So the offline working went away, and that's kind of where that application's dead end came.
Got it. And one thing I want to remind the audience is today's presentation is focused on Appian Web. The Appian product family includes also a mobile target. And for the mobile target, which would run on iOS and Android, not a Windows laptop, it does support running in 100% offline mode, where data is read and written to a local database. Both SQLite and SAP Ultralight are supported local database that you could write to. And then at a later time, when there's a connection, you would sync the local database with the enterprise database. All right, there's plenty of other questions. Let's move on. Are you using HTTPS in encrypting the communication between the laptops and the server? And if you are, have you experienced any issues?
So because and again, we're kind of a special use case, because they're already coming down an encrypted tunnel, we don't have to do any sort of HTTPS. We can, most certainly, and we do for our we do for our iOS application present an HTTPS interface, but because our product is already, the laptop's already VPN'd in and coming down an encrypted tunnel, they act like they're on the local network. So we're just, for most of our Appian deployments, Appian web deployments, we're using just regular HTTP.
Okay, great. And then the question was, what framework were you using for your Appian web application? Is that different from Chris Pollock's STD framework?
It was a homegrown, and then we took the pieces from Chris's to improve the one that was already developed.
Okay. And so that homegrown one was for your existing PowerBuilder application, or was it developed from the ground up for your web project?
It was already existing, so the whole application was converted. We did not create a new web application, which was, in our eyes, amazing how we took an existing application and converted it into the web. The cost savings was great.
Okay, excellent. So a follow-up to that, any chance to see before and after shots, you know, seeing the desktop app and seeing the web app or the IWA app?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. We don't have, I think we can pull something up now, but they're pretty much identical. John, do you have?
I don't have it on this. So
we can, we'd be more than happy to supply those to anyone who's interested in seeing what the apps look like before and after. Or get emails and we'll send out a follow-up. Absolutely.
Great. So for the audience, at the end of today's presentation, there will be a short survey to get your feedback on today's presentation. And there is a comment section. If you'd like, if you have any other questions or you'd like to get a copy of the UI, please go ahead and make those comments there and we'll be getting in touch with you. One more question just came in as we're about to wrap up. Was your original framework PFC?
no, it was not. It was a homegrown framework.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't borrow any bits and pieces from PFC?
That was before my time, but I would probably have to say yes. There's probably a couple bits and pieces here and there from PFC, just like from Chris's
framework. Got it. Got it. So, but it's not largely based on PFC. It's still pretty much a homegrown thing.
Correct.
Okay, great. All right, I think that's all the questions we have for today. So we're going to end today's webinar now. Thanks everybody for joining. And please give us your comments so we can continue to improve these webinar series that we run. And also feel free to join the Appian community at community.appian.com. There's forums, tech articles, and we have regularly scheduled technical webinars just like the one you attended today. So thanks everybody for joining and have a good day. Thanks Alex and John for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.